Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar here at Advanta IRA. And today's topic is one I've been wanting to bring on for quite some time because it's very, very timely as we hear more and more around the country about the need for more affordable housing options. And here in the Atlanta office and right here in the very Atlanta market, we do have a subject matter expert on it. And I wanted to bring her on, but before I do, just kind of want to bring you through a couple of quick things about Advanta IRA, just really to kick things off and move forward with it. My name is Ted Steinkamp. I'm a business development specialist here at Advanta IRA. Been here coming up on my 1-year anniversary very quick, but my contact information is here. I'll have this slide up toward the end. But just a couple of quick housekeeping items about the webinar. If any questions you have, we're going to wait till the end to address those. But while the webinar is going on, please feel free to input your questions in the chat box. And Precious and I will do a Q&A and answer those questions to the best of our ability. And also for a replay webinar, we're going to have it posted within 24 hours from the conclusion on the Advanta IRA website and on the Advanta IRA channel on YouTube. So you'll have two different ways to gain access to it. So with that being said, just want to take care of a quick compliance disclaimer. And just very simply, there's 4 things as a custodian Advanta IRA does not do and cannot do. And those 4 things are: we do not sell any financial products, and we do not provide any tax, legal, or financial advice. That is for qualified advisors. We don't hold ourselves out to be that. We're just a very qualified custodian and subject matter expert with all the IRS rules. But please keep in mind, we're not endorsing any particular investment provider or their products. We just want to make this as educational and informational as possible, because what we're finding is the more ideas we present, the more creativity you as investors generate. And of course, that's going to start spawning stronger relationships between all of us. But with every investment, always please consult with the proper tax, legal, and financial advisors before you make a decision. One of the most disappointing things that can happen to you with your portfolio is you get into an investment that doesn't quite work out the way you thought it would, or it's not what you thought it was going to be. So please do your due diligence, work with the proper advisors. Now, just a couple of quick things about Advanta IRA here. For starters, we've been around as a company for over 20 years, and we have a very deep bench of talent here. We have individuals on staff that are MBA, CFPs, and also have the Certified IRA Service Professionals designations. We currently have over $3 billion in assets under administration, and that is spread out over 13,000 unique account owners. Everything here is very secure. The dollars that are remaining in your account after you make your investments into whatever you choose, all of that cash is held in FDIC insured banks up to the applicable limits. So that cash is secure. And then, of course, we're all about personal service. That's one of the things we like to pride ourselves about. So every client here at Advanta IRA will have a dedicated account manager that provides a concierge style service. So if you have any questions, you have that dedicated point of contact. You don't have to dial an 800 number, leave a message in a general voicemail box and wait 3 to 4 days for someone to call you back. That doesn't happen here. And of course, all the education tools that we have, I mentioned just a moment ago, those are up on the website. You can go to advantaira.com under the events tab, and you will be able to see the repository of past webinars and future webinars that are to be scheduled. Now, just a quick thing. We're talking about self-directed IRAs. Just want to take you through just a quick elementary explanation. If you're a first timer on our webinars, or if you're just a first timer exploring this concept, IRAs have been around since 1974. There was federal legislation back then that created them. Self-directed IRAs, nothing new. They were created with that legislation. It's just they're not very well known. Only about 4% of all IRAs are truly self-directed into alternative investments. And what I mean by alternative investments, things that are different than stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, etc., that you would buy to a traditional brokerage firm. This is going to be stuff, and I'll walk you through a list of the various investments that we typically see as the most popular. But keep in mind, within IRAs, if it's a Roth IRA, it's potentially tax-free. And if it's in a traditional IRA, it is certainly tax-deferred. The benefit, you can build wealth a little bit quicker to much quicker when you don't have to pay taxes on the money. Couple of quick items here. One of the advantages with the self-directed IRAs gives you much more control over your investments. It's not like a 401k where you're limited to the menu that's presented to you, and you're also not limited to what that investment provider offers. So the world is yours. There's only two things you cannot have in a self-directed IRA, and IRAs in general, and that is life insurance contracts and collectibles. So you can't hold art, exotic sports cars, baseball cards, Barbie dolls, none of that. However, what you can hold, take a look at the list down below. This is just a portion of the list. We have some very creative clients that get into things such as music rights and royalties. They'll invest in cemetery plots, livestock, trash dumpsters, washer and dryer units. The creativity is endless, and happy to talk to you all about that at a different time. But one of the things with the self-directed IRAs, it allows you to invest in what you know best and take more control of the direction of your money. Now, why would someone want to choose to utilize a self-directed IRA? Well, first of all, a lot of people don't know your IRA is a new source of capital that you can tap. In the past, it's always been money in the bank account. Maybe you put some of that in a brokerage account or with a life insurance company for annuities, or just really your employer's retirement plan. But no, you can use your IRA to invest in other things. Stock market fatigue is a huge one. Hearing a lot of feedback. The market's been a little wonky lately, up and down. Some people are not happy with the returns they're receiving, so they are looking for alternatives. And of course, when you use your IRA to invest, the tax benefits can become enormous over time because all the rents, dividends, capital gains get paid back into the IRA, and it's tax deferred or tax free depending which IRA you have. What can be self-directed? Well, pretty much anything with the letters IRA at the end. And of course, we do happen to record keep and manage solo 401ks for business owners. And one thing a lot of people are not aware, health savings accounts and education savings accounts can also be self-directed. We do all of those here at Advanta IRA, and more than happy to speak with you about those after the webinar. If you're interested in opening up an account here, it's a very, very simple process. We're all about ease of doing business. It takes only about 15 minutes to complete an application, and all the documents get signed digitally. We'll send you a link to DocuSign. Just click, click, click. We receive the application, open up the account within 24 hours. Part of that process is the transfer or rollover paperwork to fund the account. It's all part of the documents, and we get that initiated immediately. And within a couple of weeks, when the money comes over, hopefully sooner, you're ready to invest. It's that simple. And as I mentioned also a few moments earlier, we always have on the website, you can go under our event tab at AdvantaIRA.com. We have all the webinars, the various weekly events, the podcast that my colleague Alex Perney does with various guests. And of course, we do have a blog. So with that being said, I want to tee this up because you're not here to listen to me speak. You're here to listen to Precious Price speak. And Precious and I have been talking a little bit about bringing her on to talk about investing in ADUs. Just wanted to show a little bit about her information and background here. And really, with that being said, Precious, I'm going to bring us into the your slide presentation.
Okay, sounds good, Ted. Thank you. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon now.
It is. Okay, there you go, Precious.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. So, as Ted has already mentioned, my name is Precious Price. I am the co-founder and CMO of Gather ADU. We are at our core a design and build firm for homeowners or property owners that are wanting to leverage their existing land or lots to do what's called an accessory dwelling unit. Now, we're going to learn all about what that means today, but just wanted to give you a quick overview. I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, Ted. So again, my name is Precious Price. My co-founder is Argishi Abatisian. He is not here, but together we lead what is called Gather ADU. And as mentioned, design and build firm, but we also are a software company. We have a software that makes this process a lot easier than it was years ago. And that's really the entire reason that we started all of this. So about 5 or 6 years ago, both myself and Argy, respectively, me in Atlanta, Georgia, and Argy out in Los Angeles, that is where he's based. So we are co-based with this company. But we both attempted and successfully did it, through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, completed our accessory dwelling unit builds on properties that we had in our respective cities. So the issue that we found, however, is that the process was very, very strenuous. It was very disparate. There were a number of hoops and red tape, so much red tape that we had to go through simply as homeowners who were wanting to create more housing within our communities, regardless of whatever that reason was for. So after going through that experience ourselves and then also documenting that experience and realizing that so many other property owners either want to do this, need to do this, or they just don't know how to navigate it, right? Because both myself and Argy, luckily, we have a background in real estate. However, for your average property owner or even someone that is just getting started within investing, they don't know how to do these things. So how and why should we take away this red tape? And that's all that we do at Gather ADU. We take them through the entire process that we will chat about. And today specifically, we are talking about how you can maximize your ROI with accessory dwelling units. You'll see a couple photos from my build, and then from there we can answer any questions and go from there. So let's move on to the next slide, Ted. So our mission at Gather ADU is to empower property owners by providing innovative service and user-friendly technology that simplifies the process of building an accessory dwelling unit. This is a bit of what I was touching on earlier in regards to the services that we offer, design services, architectural, engineering, through actually working with the city on the property owner's behalf to get that permit approved and issued, because typically that is the largest headache. And then from there, within select cities across the nation, we are building accessory dwelling units as well, because we do have those contractor teams. So that is how we are assisting, and all of this can be done and leveraged. Homeowners can plan, manage this process through an online dashboard that our team has created as well. Let's move on, Ted. So today we are going to be covering, we've basically already done the welcome and intro, but we're going to be covering a few ADU basics for those of you that may or may not understand exactly what we mean when we say accessory dwelling unit. We're going to go through some of the benefits, use cases, the entire process that you can anticipate if this is something that you're wanting to do, and then what are some of those steps that you need to take to go ahead and get started on your own build. So just at a very basic level, let's chat about what is an ADU. So an ADU, or also known as an accessory dwelling unit, some people say additional dwelling unit, and some people even just say a backyard tiny house, but that official term is really accessory dwelling unit. And it's basically just a smaller self-contained structure that is on your existing residential lot. This is the key to it being an accessory dwelling unit and not just a basic tiny house. We get a lot of folks who reach out to us and they're like, hey, I have this empty lot and I just want to build a tiny house on it. And from that point, it is not necessarily an accessory dwelling unit until you have a primary structure that is already there. So these accessory dwelling units can be on the same lot as a single family or a multifamily home, and they offer an independent living facility like kitchen, sleeping area, bathroom. They are their own independent dwelling. So in order for it to be an accessory or additional dwelling unit, we always like to make it very, very clear that there must be an existing primary dwelling already there. Now, these accessory dwelling units can come in many shapes, sizes, forms. Out in Los Angeles, we are building ADUs that are as large as 1,200 square feet. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, that's the size of a basic 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch style home on the south side. So these can go very large. Now, however, when we're talking about Atlanta, and we'll get into some of the specifics in terms of the restrictions and regulations here, but that maximum size is 750 square feet, not 1,200 like we have in Los Angeles. Either way, they can be just a basic detached unit, meaning the standard idea of what people think when they think of a backyard tiny house or an accessory dwelling unit. It's a separate detached structure. It could also be someone that is wanting to convert their garage into an accessory dwelling unit. We have had experience with both attached garages and someone converting that into just a separate, more so garage apartment, as well as a detached garage that they are just converting into a livable space. We've also seen someone who is actually adding the additional dwelling unit on top of the garage because they didn't want to compromise that space. So there are a number of ways to make this happen. And in addition to that, you also have the option of what we see as well, which is an addition or an attached ADU, meaning that it is actually affixed to the existing structure, but it is still its own separate dwelling unit. Now, in some places, you'll also see basement ADUs, meaning someone has converted their basement into a separate livable structure with its own entrance and all of the utilities or facilities as well. And you also sometimes as well will see someone converting their attic if it is large enough, or them making it large enough. So there are a number of ways to make this happen. However, it's really a matter of leveraging or thinking about the space, all of the spaces that you currently have, whether it is your own personal space or even within a portfolio, to figure out, okay, am I really maximizing the use of this area and this space? And if I am not, what does it look like? How could it look like for me to go ahead and convert this into some livable space for whatever reason that I would like? And we're going to get into what some of those uses and use cases are for these ADUs. We can go ahead to the next slide, Ted. So with some of these uses, some primary ones that we commonly see are renting out for profit, meaning that you're going to go ahead and build this ADU and you are wanting to somehow offset your mortgage costs that you are paying with this structure. They are either renting that out on the short term, long term. Even for instance, with me, I think about my experience putting an ADU on one of my properties over on the south side in Atlanta. I've rented that on the short term. I've rented it on the long term. I've even rented it to family. So that is something that you can absolutely take advantage of. Folks, when they are adding these, of course, they are looking at really how can they maximize their home value, increase the value of that home within that area. And of course, that is a way that ADUs do that. You basically have another separate rentable structure that is now on this lot. And that just adds all the more draw, all the more value when you are getting ready to actually sell that home. And of course, taking care of your loved ones. As I already mentioned, I have had family members live within my accessory dwelling unit, rented out. If they are transitioning to the city, it's really just become a space that whenever I need anything, I'm able to leverage that. I even had a short stint of living in the structure myself when I was transitioning from an apartment back into more of a single family home. So there are a number of ways that you're able to leverage these, but really when you are looking at this, it does not immediately, like when we talk about your ROI, your return on investment with something like this, immediately some folks go to renting it out, whether short-term, long-term, or what have you. But for some people, that ROI is really just having more space for their family. And that is why they're wanting to do that. So when you're thinking about whether or not you should do this, whether it is for yourself on a personal level or even for your portfolio, you really want to look at what the ROI means for you. And even more so, I like to touch on as well, we can actually go to the next slide, Ted. I like to touch on as well is some people are actually using this to like house their elderly parents, house their adult children, and just actually living in community with the people that they have now, especially with the current state of the economy. I would say that's a lot of what we are seeing is more family living multi-generationally. So that they are able to not only save money, but be closer together and experience those benefits. So as we already mentioned, of course, you can rent for that passive cash flow. There is an immediate property value increase that you will experience. It's a little bit hard to say. You're going to hear me talk about this throughout the presentation in terms of it really just depends. This is very much place-based work. We have done this in the states of California, Washington, Oregon, Georgia, Indianapolis, or Indiana, excuse me. But in terms of how much it's going to cost, how much it increases your property value, what does it look like? All of that really depends on your particular location. But of course, those are questions that we can help answer. And then of course, just increasing just the living unit inventory in your area, your own livable space. And as I already mentioned, when you are exploring this project, you don't necessarily need to know your use case immediately, nor do you have to stick with what you might initially choose. For me, when I was building my very first ADU on one of my properties, my goal was to actually live in that ADU myself and then rent out the primary home, because that was just a ton of space and I didn't feel like I needed that much space. I actually wanted just more of a smaller unit. However, as we were going through the build, as I kind of saw the demand or the interest that people had, I ended up deciding to actually rent it out. And I then got an apartment myself. So you of course want to have just a little bit of direction with this, because it's going to help how you actually design the unit and build it out, whether it's for you, for family, for renters, what have you. But just understand that when you are immediately getting started, you don't necessarily have to pin down your exact use case, but understand that there are a number of options available to you depending on where you are. We can go on to the next one. So I just like to give a quick overview of what some of the steps are that are involved within what we call here at Gather ADU, the pre-construction planning process. Some folks tend to think that because this is a small structure, they might look at it like, oh, a backyard tiny house, it's less than 500, 600 square feet. This will be pretty quick. You know, it's not too much that you need to worry about. That is not the case. Though these structures are smaller, they have all of the bells and whistles of your standard home. You must connect them to utilities. They have to sit on some kind of foundation. You are actually building a home out. There needs to be project plans, all types of things. So it's important to remember that when you are deciding or looking to decide if you want to do something like this. Now, the process in terms of what we call the pre-construction planning process. Of course, you begin with just an initial feasibility. And I do want to note that these are abbreviated steps. It is far more detailed than this, but you begin with some type of initial feasibility research. Can I do this? How much room do I have? What are my property setbacks? Then a matter of exploring financing options. We'll talk a little bit about that later within the presentation in terms of what is available. But I will say for now, what we commonly see is folks who are leveraging the equity within the primary home to go ahead and build the accessory dwelling unit. For some places, specifically here in Atlanta, it is required that you have a land survey, a property survey on file in order to make that happen, because that is going to let you know your actual setbacks, the setup of your lot. And from there, you work with someone like us here at Gather ADU, or you can hire architects and engineers and kind of piecemeal it together yourself. But we are that one-stop shop. You work with someone who can actually design what you are wanting to have, and then actually draft the architectural plans and the project plans that are needed to see that through. You're typically going to want to engage some kind of engineer, but we'll talk through all of the stakeholders involved in some later slides. And then with us, we'll actually match you with qualified contractors who can make this happen, who can provide you with bids. And one of the major pieces that a lot of folks like about us is the fact that you do not have to go with us for the entire process. We have some people who come to us and say, hey, I've drafted up the design on a napkin or even online. I have an architect that I've been working with. I really just want you to handle the headache and the mess that is working with the city to actually get the permit approved. We have other folks that say, hey, I want you to handle the architectural planning and we'll handle the engineering. And then again, you do not have to actually go with us for the contractor build out, the construction build out. However, we do find that most of our clients, if they're working with us from the start, they end up deciding to just because of the experience and the service that we provide. But we always like to tell you, regardless, we are going to provide more than one estimate or bid for you from contractors. We think it's really important for you to understand where the market is in terms of the pricing for all of this, and just exploring what your options are. So that's really just the look at the process. We'll match you with those qualified contractors. You'll have some assistance. We will literally handle everything, anything that the city bounces back with, any comments that they might request. We will handle that on the homeowner's behalf to go ahead and get that approved permit. And then from that point, the construction begins. We can move on to it. So an easy way that I like to specifically break this down for folks that we speak with, because typically I am the one that's kind of bringing in our new business, all of our new business, and Argy is the one that's actually maintaining it alongside our team of architects, engineers, project managers, etc. But an easy way to kind of break this long process out is into 3 phases. And these are the 3 phases of ADU success, what we call them. So number 1 is feasibility. Number 2 is everything that happens pre-construction, meaning before that shovel hits the dirt. And then you actually have the build. Now, typically one, I don't want to say mistake, but for lack of better terms, mistakes that we see homeowners or property owners making is they're immediately going to a contractor whenever they want to get started with something like this. Get some water. They immediately engage the contractor. And this isn't a bad thing, right? However, contractors enjoy doing one thing and one thing alone, and that is building. Please show me a contractor that enjoys project management, that enjoys working with the city and submitting permits and drafting plans, and coordinating all of the mess, especially if they are managing multiple projects at once. And that is why we partner with these contractors to make their jobs easier, meaning that for them, we would handle everything that happens before the build, and then we pass it off when the build is getting started. So some of the questions that you want to ask yourself in each of these phases, and we'll kind of continue to break this down through the rest of the slides, is this possible in my city? What are the build requirements that I need to abide by? And how much should I actually budget for something like this? These are the questions that you're asking yourself at the very beginning of this, in that feasibility stage. And then from that point, once you move into actual pre-construction and you've made the decision that, hey, I want to pull the trigger and I want to do this, now the question becomes, who is going to design these plans? What financing is actually available for me? And then how do I even go about getting a permit? What are all of the people and levers that I need to pull in order to do that? And finally, with the build, your one simple question really is, who can I trust to build this effectively? And if you have been through any real estate development project yourself, you have even maybe had like a renovation in your home, you would understand that it is not always easy working with contractors, especially in an industry such as real estate that can be very, for lack of better terms, outdated, meaning that we're not using a lot of tech. Many contractors, they'll swing by your home and they have a notebook in hand and they're just writing all of this down. And if they're doing that, let's say, and they're going to provide quotes to 3 or 4 folks, it's really easy for the information to get either lost or misconstrued. And that is why we exist and we partner with these folks, so that all of this can be handled in kind of one nice packaged way for that homeowner to have a very seamless experience. We can go ahead and move on to it. So when we're looking at feasibility, when you are thinking about, is this even possible in my city? There are a couple of pieces of information that you should know in order to really get the answer that you're looking for. Number 1 is actually knowing your county. I'm sure most of you already do, but it's important to have that on file. Know your county, know your city. Number 3 is where sometimes it gets a little tricky for folks, because it's knowing your zoning designation for your area, for your particular property lot. What is your zoning code? For the city of Atlanta, for instance, this is often denoted by R1, R2, R3, R4, and that is going to tell you if and how you are able to build, whether that is an ADU or anything else that you want to do, that designates what you can do on that lot. Now, I will say that here in the city of Atlanta, accessory dwelling units are permitted in zones R4, R4A, and R5. That is where those detached accessory dwelling units or any kind of accessory dwelling unit is really permitted here within the city of Atlanta. Now, number 4, are you located in an HOA neighborhood? An overwhelming amount of time, if you are located within an HOA neighborhood, this is going to make it increasingly difficult for you to do something like this, because there's just your HOA is just another hoop that you must jump through. Now, I won't say that this makes it impossible. We have seen some folks where they're in more of a less restrictive HOA, where it's just maybe they pay like $600 a year, and it's really just some kind of way for them to have some community board or association. So it's not as restrictive. But there are many HOAs that are very restrictive in terms of what you can build, who can build it, why, all of these number of pieces. So it's really important to know these 4 pieces or questions. And a piece that we are specifically working on with our technology, and we have been working to kind of overcome, is helping people to more easily understand what their zoning designation is. And one piece of how we've been able to do that is our address analyzer and our search tool, which is right on the homepage of our website. You can go ahead and go to gatheradu.com, put in that address, and from that point, it is going to tell you the size of your lot in terms of square feet, how much buildable area you have, and what is your zoning designation. We're continuing to build this tool out. It is in beta, but we are continuing to build it out for more and more cities, but specifically, at least for the city of Atlanta and the city of Los Angeles, it should be pretty accurate in terms of letting you know what your zoning code is, as well as what that buildable area is. And you can even drop the size of that ADU on there and kind of play with where it's going to be on your lot. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So when you're looking at the build requirements, and even, for instance, trying to figure out what is my zoning code, there are a number of ways that you're able to find this information. But understand that it's not just a matter of saying, okay, well, I have this very large lot and I want to go ahead and put a 800 square foot 2-story unit. We even have folks who say, I want a duplex ADU. I want it to be 800 square feet total and 400 square feet on each side. Well, whether or not you can do any of that is going to depend on your zoning code. So again, a number of ways that you can find this information of what you can do, what the height restrictions are, what it must look like, all of that. Number 1, we typically leverage this as well at Gather, in addition to the software tools we have, is Municode. Municode is a comprehensive website for cities all over the nation, where it breaks down quite literally line by line what you are able to do. So typically, if you go to that Municode website, you can search your city, and when you are in that Municode website, however, you must already know what your zoning designation is for your lot. If you do not know that, then we are at the point where you either leverage Gather and you can use that website, or quite literally just pick up the phone. Being in this business now, we've been doing this for about 4 years. I am so surprised at the number of folks who have become almost, I don't know, scared to just pick up the phone and call your local planning department, call your local zoning department. Yes, sometimes these folks can be slightly unpleasant. However, that is going to give you the most accurate information, the most up-to-date information in terms of what you can do at your lot. Typically, when you are giving these folks a call, the easiest thing that you can do is call, hey, I'd like to speak to the planning department or the zoning department, and ask one simple question. I would like to provide you with my address and know whether or not my property is eligible for an accessory dwelling unit. It's as simple as that. They'll be able to tell you whether or not that is approved in your area based on your zoning code and everything. And even if you go a little further, asking them about those build requirements, they can tell you what those height limits are, what the required setbacks are, and what is even like the maximum number of dwellings. In some places, you can do two detached ADUs, and at that point, you have 3 dwellings on the property when you include that primary one. And in some places, that limitation is just 1. Some Some places you can do a detached and an attached, but you cannot do two detached. So it really just depends on your area. As I mentioned, it depends, but it's really important for you to have some type of expertise or experts in your corner, whether that is just referencing Municode, that is contacting your local zoning or planning department, or working with our experts here at Gather ADU as well. So some common questions, of course, I bring these, we all know these foundational questions, right? What, why, how much, who, when. Answering the questions of what, why, how, and how much are really foundational elements that typically many folks want to know before they even kick the project off. Now, when it comes to answering the questions of who's going to complete this build, and when, meaning how long is this going to take, that is the golden question for everyone. How long is this going to take? These questions tend to be a little harder to answer. Regardless of your budget, regardless of your location, it's a little hard to answer because there are so many moving elements. And honestly, the answer to these later questions, these harder questions, depends on the answers that you have to the foundational questions of what, why, how, and how much. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of these questions and what that looks like. So let's look at how much, right? And again, always understand that it depends. So how much should I actually budget for something like this? The primary cost drivers that are really going to be determining how much you should budget, what your cost is going to be that size, meaning the square footage of the accessory dwelling unit that you choose. Of course, the larger that you go, the more expensive it is to go ahead and build. The smaller that you are, it's going to be a nice, more modest budget. The finish of that ADU, are you wanting some more standard finishes, or are you wanting something a little more luxury, because this isn't just going to be a rental? Maybe you're moving your mom in and you want to make sure that she has the best setup possible. And then of course, the actual type of ADU structure. And what I mean by type of ADU structure, on the very beginning slide, I kind of showed the detached, the garage conversion, attached. That is going to determine your cost as well. When you are converting an existing structure, it is cheaper than actually going ahead and saying, hey, I want to build an entirely new building in my backyard. So oftentimes we do see folks who are wanting to save a little bit in terms of that cost, but they still want this additional dwelling. We do see those people going more towards, okay, I want to convert my garage or maybe build on top of my garage, rather than going ahead and building an entirely new unit in the back of their home. Now, when you're budgeting for this, I like to split this idea out in terms of soft costs and hard costs. And if you are in real estate, have done some development, you have likely heard or are familiar with soft costs and hard costs. At a very basic level, your soft cost is going to be everything that happens before the actual build, meaning that before that shovel hits the dirt. These are your design services, the architectural planning, the engineering services, any type of land survey that may be needed or property grading that may need to be done, as well as, and this is an important piece as well, city and permitting fees. Not only do you have to pay the folks who are drafting these plans and designs and everything, you also have to pay the city. The city is going to charge you upon issuing you that permit, or prior to issuing you that permit, some type of fees related to pulling the permit, just actually building the ADU. So it's important to factor those in. And then, of course, your hard costs are pretty straightforward. This is the actual labor that you have for the construction, materials, furnishing, that piece. Typically, if you are wanting to get started and you're thinking about, okay, how should I begin budgeting for something like this? I always like to say, and I can give you at least our cost here at Gather ADU for more of like the soft cost in terms of architectural planning, engineering, design. And then when you are looking at hard costs, the best way to at least begin getting an idea is if you have contractors in your network, you have someone that you may have worked with previously, ask them what their average price per square footage is. And that is going to let you know how much ADU you can afford. If they're saying that their price per square footage is $275 and you initially wanted to go 800 square feet, but you feel like that 800 square feet times that 275 is just a bit too much and out of your budget, now you know that you may need to actually bring the size of that unit down. Now, when we're looking at soft costs here at Gather ADU, for us in terms of our design services, architectural, engineering, those pieces that are not third-party services such as a land survey or the city, our services begin at $5,900 for any structures that are under 500 square feet. And of course, it incrementally increases as you get larger and larger with that desired or preferred structured size. So that can give you an idea of exactly how much you should be able to budget, at least at a rough ballpark estimate. But the best time for you to get the most accurate estimate is once you have something down on paper. At the very least, a floor plan, if not an initial schematic design, because it's really hard. And we've had even some of our clients do this before they discovered us. They just bring a contractor out and they're trying to get an idea of how much this is going to cost, but that contractor doesn't necessarily know. The contractor is providing them with only the hard cost, yet they don't necessarily anticipate the property survey and having to actually grade the land and what they're going to be paying the city. They don't anticipate those pieces. So that's why it's really, really important for you to engage the right stakeholders in the beginning. We can go ahead and move on to it. Now, who are those stakeholders that you should be involving, right? Of course, it all starts with you. You are the property owner, so you have the actual planners. These are folks like us, right? We are helping you to plan this. And then you have the general contractor who is actually doing the action behind it, the work. So in terms of planners, this is going to be some type of lender or financer. If you are going that equity route, meaning leveraging equity, then you are going to want to reach out. I always say the best piece is try to reach out to your existing mortgage company, see if they have any offerings available. And if not, from there, you can identify different lenders. We've had some folks go with places like Rocket Mortgage or Renify, which are like more online lenders. And we have other people who have gone with more of like a community development financial institution or even a local bank or local union. So it really just depends, but you want to engage those financiers, you want to engage your designers, your architects. Of course, you have these licensed surveyors, the engineers, then the city officials. All of these are all of the stakeholders that are involved in making this tiny house possible, right? So again, this is why we always say it is not so tiny. You have a land grader if that is what you are needing. You are needing to clear some trees out or flatten your land. Who's going to pour that concrete? This could be someone from the general contractors team, or it could not. Framing it out, actually mapping, the utilities and everything. And then of course you have the build out that happens. So there are a number of phases that are going on in here, and these are most of the stakeholders who you will need to involve. Now, again, when you work with someone, for instance, like us, like Gather, we're engaging most, if not all of these folks for you. And I think that's the real draw of why folks work with us. Okay, now how do you get a permit? Of course, this is something that we can do, but this is going to be distributed by your local planning and building department. They're going to handle the entire permitting process for you. This is after you actually have the design, the architectural plans, an engineering stamp to actually verify the structural integrity of this unit. And a building permit is typically required prior to any construction or site preparation work beginning. So before a shovel hits the dirt, you must have a permit. So in order, some of the elements that are needed for this, of course, you need a completed permit application, some type of architectural and site plan, your engineering plans, as well as the license number of those stakeholders. We have some folks who say, hey, my cousin's a contractor and I want him to go ahead and handle the build. That can work in some places, right? But that just means that you are now signing up for what's called owner builder, meaning rather than the contractor being responsible for the work and the integrity of that work, you are now being responsible for that. And if anything is wrong, then you're just kind of left holding your hands. And sometimes for some people that's okay because they trust the work of that particular individual. However, we always recommend going with licensed general contractors. There are a ton of subcontractors that do work, and it is no strife to them at all. However, having that licensed general contractor will really help you to know, okay, this person is verified, they know how to do this work. And on top of that, they are connected. They are likely well connected with all of the elements that you need to get the project done: electrical, mechanical, HVAC, all of these pieces, they likely have those contacts being a licensed general contractor. So looking back at this, because at this point we have talked about most of these elements, right? We've talked about what financing could look like. What are the questions you should be asking when you are looking at getting started, the feasibility research of it all? Who are all of the stakeholders that are involved in helping you to design the unit and draft those plans and finding contractors? And what is required for you to actually go ahead and submit that permit? So this process, I'm hoping now feels a slightly less overwhelming. But for some folks, it might still feel overwhelming or even more overwhelming than when we started, because now there's all of these questions and information that you need to answer. But regardless, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide, Ted. Regardless, know that we have a team here at Gather ADU. We are licensed, we are insured, we are vetted, we have done this all across, like I said, all across the nation in numerous cities. We have people that are dedicated to simply just bugging the city to make sure that the project is moving along. That is how dedicated we are to all of this. So should you want to engage anyone, I do hope that you think about us in that process as well. We can move on to the next slide as well, Ted. Now that is everything that I have in terms of a prepared slides or the webinar. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to answer anything that may come up from folks now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Precious. This is, I know it was initially a short presentation, but it is very detailed, dense. And one question I have, this is a TED question. I know you spoke a little bit about the different markets in which Gather ADU has been engaged building product, but are there some areas of the country where this just doesn't work, where an investor would not want to pursue it and waste their time, or does it work like in all 50 states and many municipalities?
No, so it would really depend. So the only place where you would not want to do this is a place where they do not have any ADU regulations in place just yet, because that means that you're going to go through even more hoops than what I've already described in terms of getting some type of variance for your property, actually going in front of city council to get some kind of approval. It is a lot easier when a city and a municipality already has those regulations in place, and then we are just going based on what they have. So of course, across the West Coast, this is it's very prime in terms of doing this. It's normal. They have been doing this for years, and they are light years ahead. They are to the point where we are working with a number of investors, right? Because they've released various Senate bills, assembly bills. There is a Senate bill that folks who have multifamily properties, let's say that you have two duplexes on a property, that is 4 doors. They've released a bill that basically says that if you have 4 doors, you can build as many ADUs up to how many doors that you have. So we are working with a number of investors who have multifamily properties, and they're adding 4 ADUs there, 6 ADUs on that property in order to actually increase the number of doors that they have.
All right, interesting. And as far as the construction, yeah, I know we were looking at some images of just stick framing, which many of us are accustomed to. Is prefab or factory built something that's permissible, or is that just really going to be based upon what the municipalities allow?
It'll be based upon the municipality, but more often than not, we are seeing a more of an acceptance of the prefab or modular units. The unit that I actually did here in Atlanta was a prefabricated unit, meaning that we had a delivered structure there, and then we built out that structure. And we are even working with, we have partners who do more of cold frame steeling, and that's a bit modular as well. So you can do modular, but it would depend on your particular city. Here in Atlanta, I do know that you can.
Interesting. And how about pivot points? I mean, certainly, you covered a couple of things, such as trying to increase yield on a real estate investment by adding an ADU, housing family members, or just as an overall investment. But are there additional pivot points beyond that that may be, worthwhile to explain at this point?
I would say those are the primary. I would say those are the primary pivot points, and whether you're adding doors, it's a rental. The 2 primary ones that we are seeing are folks that are wanting to house their family or have some extra rental income.
Okay, interesting. And it looks like this is something that's evolving. Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of municipalities probably do have interest in at least in learning about it and how they can work through their housing issues and housing shortages.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's no secret that we are currently in a housing crisis. And when I say housing crisis, it may not be affecting you personally, but I'm sure that there is likely someone in your network or first or second or third degree connection that is affected, even if it is just the cost of housing that is burdening them. So we are seeing more and more cities that are either overturning their zoning regulations or even making it easier for these units, because previously there may have been a lot of restrictions in terms of, okay, we require 2 parking spaces if you're going to add an ADU, and we require this and that. We're seeing a lot of cities across the nation actually take away the parking requirements altogether, especially if
Mhm.
you are more so in like a metro city and you are within a mile or two from like transportation, like a bus, a train, something like that.
Okay. And one question of personal interest. I've noticed with a lot of apartment complexes, they'll have a certain number of units that are handicap or elderly accessible.
Mhm.
How how easy is it at the design level and the implementation level to create something like that that may be very beneficial to have stable renters that maybe are handicapped or elderly and would just be long-term tenants?
Pretty straightforward, honestly. And a majority of the designs that you will see are single level homes, meaning that they are ADA accessible. It is we at least even here at Gather, whenever you want to go more of like a 2-story or a lofted, at that point that is more of an even more custom build, and that increases the price of it. But for the most part, even aside from us, if you go to other design firms, most of them are single level homes, meaning that they are accessible too.
Great. And I'm going to pull out something here. I want to check. Looks like we had a couple of questions slide in. Um, One gentleman had asked a question, Precious. Do you run into situations in which the municipality allows ADUs but do not allow you to rent them out for income? If so, is there a way around this if my purpose is to generate extra income?
So we do run into places where I wouldn't say that they do not allow you to rent it out altogether, but more often than not, what we see is that if you are going to be renting it out, they require you to have some type of owner occupancy, meaning that you either are inside of the primary home or you're occupying the ADU yourself and then you're renting out that primary. But in terms of a workaround for the actual rental, mm, I don't have an answer for that. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. For instance, even here in Atlanta, the folks that like there's an initial hurdle of wanting to rent it out on a short term, but the workaround for that is actually just simply getting that short term rental license in order to make that happen. So just finding out whether or not that is something that's offered wherever you are.
All right, interesting. And we're getting running up here on the end of time. So if anyone has any final questions, if you'll please tap them into the chat box and or the question box, and certainly would like to ask those of Precious while we have just another minute or two of time. So anything else you wanted to add, Precious? Because you did cover a lot of ground, or anything you wanted to maybe retrace just briefly.
Mm, I would say that that is most of everything. If the only piece I would say to really leave you all off is if this is something that you are considering, and whether you feel like you have got a grasp on the information we covered, or this was super overwhelming and you don't even know where to start, set up a call with one of our experts. More often than not, I am the one that is actually picking up the phone, chatting with all of our folks, and then at that point we'll pass you off to the other people we have on the team. But I am always willing to answer any questions. Typically, when we hop on the phone, I'm even willing to do that research while we are sitting on the phone to see what I can find. And if I can find an answer for you, great, I'll get it to you. If not, I'll let you know that I can email you afterwards, whether or not I find that answer, or I just letting you know that, hey, I wasn't able to get anything. But I would say, yeah, have a conversation with someone just to figure out what is possible. And as mentioned, please go to gatheredu.com, use that tool, that address analyzer tool that we have to see what details show up for your particular lot or your particular property. As I mentioned, we are still in the early stages of building that tool out. So if you run into any bugs, also let me know. Feel free, to email me, precious@gatheradu.com. But yes, please play around with that tool. There are a number of resources that we have on the website, cost calculators. Our blog site is very, very extensive. That's how most people around the country find us. But yeah, there's so much available, and we are really working to what we call democratize the development process. You should not need a degree in urban planning just to, create a little bit of housing within your community. This is really something that if you just have access to the information, the resources and the wherewithal, you should be able to make happen and do.
Okay, Precious, we are up on time and we are out of questions. So you did an awesome job covering this. As you and I were talking in our pre-webinar dialogue, you said, Ted, you're going to learn a lot today, and I did. I appreciate it, and personally thank you for that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're very welcome. Well, this concludes the webinar for today. Just a quick note, we are going to have the slides available fairly shortly. They will be up on our website. You just go to advantaira.com. And if you do need to get in touch with me, there's my contact information up there on the screen. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you do want to download a link and maybe forward this presentation on to a friend, feel free to do so. That's why we have that in existence. But with that being said, I'm going to bring everything to a close. I wish everyone a very prosperous and productive Thursday, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.